Hello, this is Knox. Today we will acquaint ourselves with a deeply perplexing case, one that demands steady nerves and will be judged amid great ambiguity. I will leave the final conclusions to you, but let us proceed directly to the matter at hand. Lacey Fletcher was born on November 25, 1985, to her parents Clay and Sheila Fletcher. She was their only child, and the family lived in a small village in the state of Louisiana. This village had no more than 1,000 residents, and its name translates to slaughter, an unsettlingly fitting detail for the story we are about to explore. When Lacey was around 9 years old, she moved with her parents to a new home in an affluent residential area on Slater Street. The street ended in a cul-de-sac lined with grand houses and beautifully maintained gardens. From an outsider's perspective, life there appeared far more pleasant, as though happiness itself resided within those surroundings. The Fletcher family seemed to be a typical middle-class household. Lacey's mother, Sheila, worked as a court secretary, responsible for overseeing administrative procedures, while her father, Clay, was employed by a non-profit organization. The family was devout, attending church every Sunday. Lacey studied at a Baptist academy and played on the school's volleyball team. Neighbors described her as no different from other children, cheerful, active, and sociable. She was a petite, well-coordinated girl who enjoyed sports, playing in the garden, and running along the street. However, when Lacey turned 14, her parents withdrew her from school, and she continued her education at home. By that time, subtle signs of Asperger's syndrome had begun to appear. Asperger's syndrome is a form of autism characterized by difficulties in social interaction and communication, though intellectual development is typically comparable to that of a healthy individual. For this reason, it remains unclear why Lacey was removed from school and placed under homeschooling. Her parents never made any public statements regarding this decision. Perhaps it was related to Asperger's syndrome or other social challenges, yet neither neighbors nor classmates noticed anything particularly unusual about her behavior. A former friend later recalled that they became close quickly during school years, describing Lacey as a dear and sincere person. Though often reserved and shy, she was able to clearly express her opinions. After Lacey stopped attending school at 14, contact between the friends ceased, and little was heard about her thereafter. On one occasion, though she could not recall who told her, the friend learned that Lacey regularly visited psychologists during her teenage years, something uncommon at the time, as such visits were usually associated with serious concerns. A neighbor named Robert stated in 2022 that he last saw Lacey about 15 years earlier when she was just over 20. At that time, Lacey occasionally spent time with his younger brother, as their homes were adjacent. Even then, Robert noticed she seemed different from others her age. While most young women attended parties, drank alcohol, or showed interest in relationships, Lacey preferred watching Disney movies alone. After the age of 14, Lacey became increasingly withdrawn, went outside less frequently, stopped attending school, and gradually lost nearly all social connections. Eventually, she stopped interacting even with the neighbor's brother, and then she was no longer seen. Many assumed the family had moved or that Lacey had gone elsewhere to study, but neither was true. Had anyone known that Lacey remained in her parents' home all those years, it might have been possible to save her. In May 2017, Robert encountered Lacey's father and asked about her, how she was doing, whether she had moved, what she was studying, and how her life was progressing. Clay replied briefly that she was fine and still living at home, then quickly changed the subject. This struck Robert as strange. By then, Lacey would have been in her early 30s, and yet no one ever saw her. Even without prying, one might expect to notice a neighbor taking out the trash or coming and going. Still, Lacey remained unseen, and her father's evasive response left Robert with lingering suspicion. On January 23, 2022, at 2:30 a.m., a call was placed to the local police station. It was Lacey's mother, Sheila Fletcher, her voice filled with distress as she reported that her daughter had stopped breathing. Police rushed to the home, and the coroner's office was notified. When entering the house, authorities were overwhelmed by a repulsive stench of decay and feces that made breathing unbearable. The coroner later stated that in his entire career he had never encountered a smell so horrific. For a week afterward, he struggled to eat due to nausea. This man, with 30 years of experience as a doctor and coroner, had witnessed countless tragedies, yet what he saw in the Fletcher home deeply shocked him. The sheriff, too, was bewildered by the scene. Lacey lay on the couch in the living room. At first glance, she appeared to be around 30 years old, though unkempt. Upon closer examination, it was discovered she weighed only 96 pounds and was severely emaciated. She wore only a t-shirt pulled above her chest. Her eyes were wide open, and her hair was completely tangled into a dense, matted mass, impossible to comb. Her entire body was covered in feces, including her ears, and waste material was found in her eyes and mouth. Bed sores covered her body, some festering, others so deep that bone was exposed. These sores typically occur in bedridden individuals. Brown spots and severe wounds marked her body, and her buttocks were badly deformed, with patches of missing skin. Lacey was infested with insect larvae living in various parts of her body, causing unimaginable suffering. Photographs taken at the scene were never released due to their horrifying nature. Even seasoned officers struggled to recover from what they witnessed. However, one photograph of the couch itself was made public. The furniture was completely destroyed and rotted, with a large hole where Lacey lay, filled with human remains, skin fragments, pus, and feces. Even the wooden floor beneath had begun to rot. During the autopsy, foam remnants from the couch upholstery were found in Lacey's stomach, suggesting that extreme hunger had driven her to eat the couch itself. The outcome was deemed multifactorial, resulting from neglected bed sores, bone inflammation, and blood infection. When found, Sheila was sitting beside her daughter, crying, while Clay appeared utterly devastated. Investigators questioned how such neglect could occur and why no action was taken. Initially, the parents declined public comment. Later, Sheila testified that Lacey had grown increasingly distant and, upon turning 20, refused to leave the house. Eventually, she refused to rise from the couch. Though medical advice was sought without Lacey present, she refused hospitalization, and her parents did not know how to proceed. Her condition worsened until she no longer used the bathroom, relieving herself in towels placed nearby or directly on the couch. Sheila claimed she brought food, drinks, and attempted to tend to her wounds. Lacey never complained of pain and remained mentally aware until the end. When she stopped breathing, emergency services were called, but it was too late. Rumors suggested a neighbor compelled the call after seeing Lacey motionless through a window, though police never confirmed this. It later emerged that the parents hadn't been home for nearly 2 days before her death, during which time Lacey likely remained unfed. Questions arose as to why Lacey never got up or sought food herself. Some sources suggested locked-in syndrome, a condition in which consciousness remains, but physical movement is nearly impossible. Lacey had lived on that couch for 12 years. In court, jurors required medical assistants to view the photographs. Silence filled the courtroom. On May 2, 2022, Clay and Sheila Fletcher were charged with second-degree murder and jailed. Released on a $300,000 bond, they maintained their innocence. The trial continued into 2023. It is inconceivable that parents could live normally while their daughter decomposed beside them. The couch was in the living room, and they watched TV nearby amid unbearable stench. Many disturbing details remain undisclosed. People continue to wonder how this could happen. Bed sores don't form overnight. Even if Lacey was an adult, there were options for institutional care. Financial hardship does not appear to explain the neglect. Ultimately, the charges were reinstated, and the parents were indicted again. The district attorney stated that justice would be served and guardians held accountable. Thank you for watching. I recommend exploring other videos on our channel. Like and subscribe. Until we meet again.